Okay, this is a main share meeting, and today it's with lots of gratitude that I'm welcoming Reggie, who's come to share about 40 minutes around Reggie's 123 story, after which we'll open up for Q&A. If you're a shy sharer and would like to ask Reggie a question and you don't want to say it on camera, please just send me it privately in the chat. And with that, it's over to you, Reggie.
Thank you, Young. My name is Reggie White, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. See, I'm so used to going to AA meetings that I don't get to say what I really, really, really am deep down where I live, which is an addict. And let me let you know exactly who I was. I'm a guy who smoked crack, right? I smoked rocks. I smoked crack. I was called a basehead, a crackhead. I'm a guy who was looked at and cursed at by little 12-year-old kids as they sold me rocks and rode away on their bicycles. I'm that kind of guy, man, who eventually was walking those streets like a zombie at 3 or 4 in the morning. But basically, Young has asked me to come out here and give you my step 1, 2, 3 experience and tell my story. And I have 2 different perspectives on this. For starters, I believe that there are 2 different ways that I had steps 1, 2, and 3. And I think a lot of us do, because it's different when I'm a newcomer and when I'm a used newcomer. What's a newcomer and a used one? Well, when I first come into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, everything is brand new. Or Cocaine Anonymous. See, I'd never heard of this stuff. I'd never heard of recovery, right? And so everything was kind of easy for me. It was all brand new. It was all easy. You guys were very welcoming. And then, and in general, then when I become a used newcomer, that's when I've relapsed, right? And once I relapse, things are different. And I'm going to tell you in detail about how that was so much harder for me to come back as a relapser, as opposed to when I was first new to this program. Because there's this guy, Clancy, who saved a lot of lives here in Southern California. And what he used to always say was, there's no friendly direction, right? When I'm coming to this program, there's no friendly direction out there. Everybody's the enemy. And the only friendly direction is Cocaine Anonymous, right? And when I'm coming back as a relapser, sometimes that's not a friendly direction. It doesn't feel like a friendly direction. It is a friendly direction, but when I'm coming back as a relapser, the way my head tells me, that's not a friendly direction. I'm looking at you guys and I'm thinking that you guys are looking at me and saying things like, oh, here he comes again. Why can't he get it? He would get it if he really wanted this thing. What are you going to do different this time? Why can't you be like your brothers? What's wrong with you? Why can't you get this? Things like that. Even though all you guys are doing is welcoming me back, and all you want me to do is to get this thing, right? But my head tells me whole different things, and even Cocaine Anonymous is not a friendly direction. So let me start. I first came to the fellowship. I came through the back door getting the Cocaine Anonymous. I came in that back door of Alcoholics Anonymous because when I came here in 1987, I came here February 7th of 1987. And to get into a rehab, you had to say you were an alcoholic. They wouldn't pay your way if you were an addict. You had to be an alcoholic, and that was the only way in. Now, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I had no thoughts of being an alcoholic, but my brothers had coached me. I had 2 brothers who came into the fellowship ahead of me, Ralph and Ronald. And I had this girl's car for 2 weeks. I'd gone from work like I always did, left my job. I caught the bus over to her house in the valley, and I had on my suit from work and everything, picked up her car like I did every weekend, drove to LA to go pop, right, to go buy crack. And of course I had to test it, make sure it was okay, right, before I take it back. And you know what happened. Once I took one, I couldn't stop. And so I smoked it all up. And then I spent the rest of my money, and then I was going to go back. And then I smoked that all up. And then I started getting credit from different drug dealers through the neighborhood because everybody knew me and they knew my word was good. And so now I got a whole bunch of people looking for me. I have this girl's car for 2 weeks. I'm in this car. I'm not shaving. I'm not showering. I'm not brushing my teeth. I'm not combing my hair. I hadn't changed out of this suit. I stank. I had that smell of desperation and stink on me. And I finally thought had one rational thought in these 2 weeks, because everybody is looking for me, and these guys would have hurt me real bad. And my brothers, I called my brothers, Ralph and Ronald, the two who had disappeared on me. And I didn't know where they went. My brother Ronald had told me something about this harbor light place, but I didn't really listen to him. And then he said, my brother Ralph though said, I'll take the car back for you if you go into this place. So after a little bit of negotiating, I agreed to go into this place, right? And on February 7th of 1987, I walked into the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center more dead than alive. I had no idea what recovery was, didn't even think, I'd never heard of it, didn't think people recovered. I had not had a step one experience at all. I went upstairs, they took that suit away from me and threw it away, that dirty, nasty, filthy suit, and they let me go upstairs and detox. I thought it was just to sleep. And I was sleeping comfortably because they told me that they won't tell anybody you're in here. They're not allowed by law. And I was comfortable because all these guys that were after me really would have killed me. But I was like, okay, I'm somewhere where nobody can get to me. So I slept for a week, and then they sent me down this thing called an AA meeting. And when I got to that AA meeting, these guys are in here talking about alcohol. I ain't got no problem with alcohol. My problem's with crack, right? I'm a smoker. My problem is with smoking. I could even snort cocaine. Like, see, these are the delusions I was going through. This is what I'm telling myself, because I had no idea what my problem was, right? But my problem in my mind was just the fact that I was smoking crack, and that I knew that took all of my money up. And if it wasn't for the fact that it took all my money up, and you long throat women kept smoking up all of my dope and stealing my cars and taking my dope and taking my money, everything would have been okay. So really, it was probably more so you women's fault more than anything else. That was the way I looked at it. So I'm in here to regroup more than anything else. I'm only in this place to regroup. But I went to this AA meeting, and the guy stood up at that AA meeting, and he started talking. He's pounded on the podium, and he said, if you want what I have, you will get this Bible, read it from the beginning, and get a sponsor, and your life can change. And of course, I'm looking at the guy, and I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, look at this dude up here. It was a white dude with a beard. He had on a suit and tie. He looked lame as hell, like I do right now. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, I don't want nothing you got. But then I thought about the fact that he probably was leaving that Harbor Light Center. He wasn't spending the night there like me. And then I thought about the fact he probably had a car too. Like, I don't have a car right now, but he probably has a car because he's not walking down Skid Row this time of night. And I know he got a home that he's going to. I ain't got a home. I'm staying here in Harbor Light. And he probably has a job and a couple of girls, all these things that I don't have. So I said, maybe I want a little bit of what this guy's got. I asked him to be my sponsor. He bought me that Bible. I looked at it, and it said Alcoholics Anonymous on the front of it. I'm like, what the hell is this? But I opened it up, and it said there is a solution. And I got my first message of hope. But I went upstairs because I'm a smart guy, and I said, I'm going to read this thing from the very beginning, like he said, because they were talking about only 2 of you guys are going to get it, and everybody else is going to fail. I'm not a guy who fails, right? I've got a week sobriety because I slept. So I'm going to get this thing, whatever it is. I didn't even know what it was, but I'm going to get it. I'm going to read this book tonight. And I opened the doctor's opinion, and I started reading that chapter, and that's where I learned who I was. That's where I started to learn. First, I read that part about where it said the only hope for the chronic alcoholic is total abstinence. And you really lost me right there, because I knew what abstinence meant, and I didn't come here for that. I really did come here. I came here because I was running away from these guys, right? And I needed a place to hide, and I needed a place to regroup. But then really, I wanted to leave that place right then and there, but I couldn't leave because I didn't have anywhere to go. So I stayed long enough and went to a real AA meeting where then I started to hear some of you guys. And thank God you guys tell your story. See, I still hadn't done step one. I had not even acknowledged that I was an alcoholic or an addict, right? I knew I had a problem smoking crack, and I knew that I needed to leave that alone. But see, I'd already quit angel dust, PCP, by myself. So I thought I could always quit this by myself. Because way back in college, I had been smoking PCP, and I said, oh, no, I can't handle this. I quit. So because I was able to quit that, I thought I could quit anything else if I really needed to. So I'm in here, and I'm starting to read this book this AA book a little bit. Not really, though. I'd stopped reading it after that. But I started hearing you guys at the podium, and thank God you tell your stories, because some of you guys started telling your stories, and you were smoking, you were drinking the same way I drank, and you were smoking the same way I smoked. And more importantly, you be on those sprees and you were feeling the same way I was feeling. I was like, this dude was doing stuff exactly like me. And then I found myself laughing. Found myself laughing at how you guys told your stories. You know, it's stuff that was the same way as me. And thank God you tell your stories, because that's what caught my attention long enough for me to realize that, wait a minute, maybe this might be some of me. And I had an advantage. I have to admit, I had an advantage probably that none of you guys have had. I had two brothers who had smoked. I have 5 brothers, and we all drank and smoked dope together, right? We smoked crack so much at my mom's house that she had a nervous breakdown and almost died. When all 6 of us had moved back in her house, she was in the hospital for 2 weeks and almost died. And that was right before Ralph and Ronald disappeared and went to rehab. I didn't know they went to rehab, but now I'm looking at them, and the same thing that all of you guys are sharing from the podium and stuff, and that you're sharing with me one-on-one, they were sharing that stuff. And I'm looking at them, and I kept thinking, wait a minute, they smoked just like I smoked. Matter of fact, you guys won't believe this, they were way worse. They were fucked up. I was bad, but I kept a job, and I always looked at them as being way worse than me, right? When we were out there, I held on to a job, and I was a functional guy, and they stopped working, and they were just running the streets. And so, but I started to get my step 1 experience like that. That's how I got my first step 1 experience, because I came here and I started listening to you guys, and I started to realize, wait a minute, I am an alcoholic and I am an addict, because the thing made sense. When I read it in the doctor's opinion, it was talking about how it started telling me about myself. It said that, why is it, Reggie, when you take one, and see, somehow with crack, reading the AA book, it's easier when you smoke crack to me, because once I take one, I can't stop, and I have to take another one. With crack, that's automatic. Once I take one, I can't stop until all of my money is gone. Not only all of my money is gone, but all of everything, all of my resources, all the credit I could get, all the money I could steal out of my wife or my mom's purse, or all of, everything I got. So I'm like, wait a minute, I do have a problem. Maybe I am an addict. So I started to realize that I was an addict and an alcoholic, and my life was unmanageable. It was easy to see that my life was unmanageable, right? They talk about the bedevilments and all that. I didn't even need to see all that. I knew that I couldn't pay my bills. I knew that I couldn't hold on to a car. I couldn't hold on to that holy trio, license, insurance, and registration all at the same time. I couldn't hold on to a bank account. I couldn't hold on to girlfriends. I couldn't hold on to jobs. My life was unmanageable. It was easy to see that. I already knew I was an alcoholic and an addict. Not so much alcoholic as an addict, right? I knew I was an addict, but I wasn't sure I was an alcoholic. But I knew I was an addict. So I just held on to the fact that if I drink, I'm definitely gonna go and smoke. So I knew that. So I knew I couldn't drink without smoking. So drinking is out too. Then the life is unmanageable part was easy for me to see, because I didn't have nothing. I didn't have anywhere to go. Like Clancy said, there was no friendly direction other than you guys. And this was a sad, sorry way to go. But this was the way that I had to go. I say sad and sorry because I was always used to paying for myself and taking care of myself. And now I had to go the hard way of coming slowly, regrouping and stuff. Then the hard part, that God part, right, came to believe that a power greater than myself would restore me to sanity. And I'm looking at my brothers when I first came here, and I was like, they must have found a loophole in here, because I grew up in the church, but I'm like, that's the way of weakness. We always saw that. That was the way that people who didn't have any, the way of that was for the people who didn't have anything. And that was like, oh, you can't get your rewards here on earth. You get your rewards in heaven. That's kind of like that's what I took from my Baptist upbringing, right? And I thought that was a way just to hold us down. But then I started hearing that. And then thank God again for you guys for sharing. Everything about steps 1, 2, and 3, I got from you guys sharing and me identifying and me seeing it in myself. Because what happened, there were all kind of different people in the AA, right? There were a bunch of old timers. And those old timers would go up there and they would start talking about God. And then there were some square people, right? There were some square guys and girls who were younger, and they would go up there and they would be talking about God. Then there were people who were really cool. There were ex-gangbangers. They would go up to that podium. They were talking about God. And then there was a guy, like where I went in 9604 South Figueroa, my first AA group. There was a guy in there. When I first walked in there, I thought he was a pimp. He had on a suit and he had on a vest. He didn't have a shirt on. Well, wait, no, he did have a shirt on. It just didn't look like it. His shirt was buttoned down to like the last button looked like on the bottom. Totally wide open. His chest all out there. He's in this suit. He had on his hair was pressed, right? It was like a perm with this black guy, right? And he looked like Superfly. This guy looked like a pimp. Totally opposite of me, because I'm a square guy, right? And I said to myself, this is how cold-blooded you guys got in my system, in AA and CA, right? I looked at that guy and I said, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna pick somebody who was entirely opposite of me. And I picked that guy to be my sponsor. He was my first sponsor, because even that guy who looked like a pimp, when he went up to that podium, he was talking about God. See, every one of you guys were talking about God, and it was like from the squarest people to the coolest person, from the youngest people to the oldest person. And when I started hearing, and I'm sitting back and man, I be judging and I be analyzing, I be watching you guys, right? People say don't do that, but how am I supposed to? God gave me this. God gave me this, right? And I'm supposed to use it. And so I'm looking at that and I said, everybody is singing the same song. Everybody can't be wrong, right? Because it sounded like the same song coming out of everybody. Everybody was talking about this thing, this God thing. And I was like, as much as I didn't want to deal with it, I said, okay, maybe this God thing can work. And step 2 is that's all I need. That's all I need to say is maybe this God thing can work. Maybe this God thing. That's all I need. I don't have to say, oh, I'm believing in God and you're this and the God is everything or he is nothing. A lot of people say that before they even have any idea what that means. I don't know if God is everything or nothing until that's all I have left is God. And believe me, I'm about to tell you a situation like that. But I was sitting there, but I remember coming in and I was thinking, maybe this God thing can work. And my life started taking off right from there. And then we got to that third step. Or what happened, because I didn't do the third step. I'm going through AA and CA, just going to the podium and going to the dances and all this stuff. But then we started Never Too Early Big Book Workshop when I was about 10 months sober. That's the one that started at my mom's house with 13 of us, me and my 2 brothers and about 10 other people around my mom's dining room table. And we have our big books open early on a Sunday morning, and she gets up to go to church and almost cries. She's so thrilled that she brought her sons back to her. And so now we started, and about a month or 2 after we started, we went to a Joe and Charlie convention in Long Beach, which is right near Los Angeles. And so we started working the steps exactly as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We went and saw Joe and Charlie, not tapes. We actually went to their workshop out in Long Beach, California in 1987. And so we went through the whole thing as a workshop. The whole Never Too Early went to their thing. And we started doing the steps exactly as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my life took off. And I started to get everything. I had a real, like I said, I wasn't like my brothers Ralph and Ronald. I hadn't destroyed everything. I had a real good work history and my life took off immediately. My life got really good, really fast. I got really good jobs and I'm making a lot of money and I got that girlfriend with the son. And now I moved I move in with her. So I got a ready-made family and my life is going so great. And we're doing Never Too Early. And my baby brother has come on Christmas Day of that year. So 4 out of 6 boys are in the fellowship now. And the other 2 brothers are fine too. They stopped smoking crack and they just went to smoking, drinking and smoking weed, right? But they were fine with that. So I'm not here to judge that. And my life took off, man. And my life got really, really good, really, really fast. And then my baby, or rather, then I got recruited by the richest man in California to bring our company back from Atlanta to Los Angeles. So I moved to Atlanta. And so now they got me a home in Atlanta, and I'm living in Atlanta, and I'm working in Atlanta. And I've got all these employees, and I got all this money, and I've got all this stuff, and I'm flying back and forth. I got my family. I've moved them out of South Central LA into West Hollywood, and I'm flying back and forth every 2 weeks. I'm no longer going to Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. I'm no longer going to meetings because I'm too busy. I'm no longer calling my sponsor the pimp. He wasn't really a pimp, but he just dressed like one all the time. I'm no longer calling him anymore. He's a sponsor in name only. I'm no longer going on the panels to prisons or taking the panels down on Skid Row like I used to. I'm no longer doing any of the things in Cocaine Anonymous that got me all the things that Cocaine Anonymous got. And I always talk about it as don't let the life that CA gave you get in the way of your CA life, right? Because it's true. Because then I wasn't ready. Those trials that Bill talked about, right? Bill talked about how if an alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through self-sacrifice and working with others, he won't be able to survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. And if he can, he'll drink. And if he drinks, he'll die, and all hope will be lost indeed. And then those trials came, and I wasn't ready for them. My little girl got sick. When my little girl got sick, we took her to Children's Hospital. Doctor gave her some medicine, wasn't supposed to be given to a child that young. That guy ended up getting fired. I found out later. It started eating her kidneys up from the inside. And for 4 long months, we're back and forth because you can't stop a seizure medication. You have to switch it to another, or else she'll have seizures. And my daughter is being eaten alive from the inside. And all she could do was hug me. Daddy, tummy hurts, tummy hurts. I can't stop the pain. And we're back and forth trying to get them to switch it. And I said, enough. Took her to Cedars-Sinai, best hospital in LA. They took one look and said, we have to intubate her. She's in too much pain. We have to figure out what's wrong with her. They put her in an induced coma for 3.5 weeks. And all the CA came to the hospital, and all the church people with my mom and all of our family. And we were like swarmed with people. And you guys were with us, man, every second of every day. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were not alone. My daughter was not alone. We sat there reading a book to her. Whoever would come would sit next to her because they said she needed to hear words. And so the next person would sit down and read. And the next person would pick up the story we were going. It was The Hobbit. And we were just reading that, and I'm praying, man. I stopped praying because I remember how much I didn't like that God thing and that church thing. And I'd stopped praying. I was ashamed. That first time through this fellowship, I was ashamed to get on my knees and pray in front of my wife, right? I just felt shame about that for some reason. Don't know why. Anyway, so I start praying again. God, take my life, save my daughter. And they came out and they said, we figured out what's wrong with your daughter. They had called the manufacturer of the drug. And the manufacturer of the drug told them, they finally, nobody had done that, thought to do it before. They finally called the manufacturer. He said, oh, that's Tegretol poison. That's the seizure medication they put her on. And they said, oh, she should have been switched to another medication. They didn't tell us that. Anyway, they just said, we need to do exploratory surgery. They made a decision to murder my daughter. See, I found all this out later in the trial, and that's what really sent me down, just really down. And they didn't tell us that. They just said, we need to do exploratory surgery. And I said, okay. And they opened her up and they killed her. And when they killed her, it felt like God left, right? And I just checked out on you guys because I didn't have anything, I had stopped going to meetings. I had stopped being around you guys. I had stopped talking to a sponsor. I'd stopped talking to sponsees. I'd stopped going on panels. I'd stopped doing all the things in Cocaine Anonymous that would have prepared me for something like this. And my first instinct wasn't to lean into the program. My first instinct was to shut down. And I never went back to that dream job, and I totally shut down. And for 16 years, I was that way. Let me see how much time on that. Maybe enough. I shut down for 16 years after that, right? I tried to commit suicide a year after she had died. Well, I went back to a bar. I lasted 11 months like that. I went back to a bar and I drank. See, because I'm not an alcoholic. Remember, deep down inside of me, where I live, I'm not really an alcoholic. My problem is really this crack thing, right? And I remember after about 11 months of just being in agony and anger, I was just angry all the time. I went to a bar and I drank. And then I found out, I realized how much of an alcoholic I was. I forgot. That alcoholism hit me. As soon as I drank, it hit me like a ton of it. It came back at me 100-fold. Like I had never stopped drinking, but like it went 100-fold. And those 2 weeks were like crazy and agony. And then one of you really pretty women was sitting at the bar after that with your low-cut dress, and it was long, short skirt, long legs out there. You guys were gorgeous, and you gave me that look that you always do, and I tilted my head and looked back and gave you the interview. Do you get high? And you guys said yes, and I was off smoking like I really wanted to. And see, I knew I couldn't smoke. And after 2 weeks of that, it was the anniversary of my baby's death, and that's when I wanted to see God. And I took a bunch of pills and I committed suicide. And that's when I really went down. And after that, it was 16 years before I made it back to you guys, right? And my first step was different coming back to you guys. It took 16 years to get back to you guys. I tried every imaginable way that I could to make it back to you guys. After I spent the first 5 years just being angry, and me and my family spent it destroying each other, my wife and my stepson. And we just couldn't hold it together. We couldn't hold it together any kind of way. And we finally destroyed each other. Then I wanted to get back to Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. I wanted to get back to CA, but I wanted to get back to Never Too Early. That's why if there's anybody new in here, that's why you get a home. Because you want to get back. Those are the people that know you. They love you no matter what. And you know that they love you no matter what. And I wanted to get back to them. That's all I kept thinking. I want to get back to Never Too Early while I was out there. But me and my brothers were so close. My family is so close. And I have 3 brothers who are in this fellowship now. We had all come in here together. We had all these years. So now, like I told you about the no friendly direction thing. Now I'm thinking, now I have no friendly direction, because now my head is going and I'm thinking that you guys are all judging me. Every one of you guys that I see, I think you guys are, because I've seen some, unfortunately, if we got 100 members in Cocaine Anonymous, 99 great people. And all we are is pulling for other people. And then there's that one asshole who sits there. Oh, what you gonna do this time? Oh, what's wrong with you? Oh, that guy that just don't want it. If he wanted it, he would get this. And I'm hearing all this stuff. Everything that I'm hearing, right, when I'm on the inside comes back to me when I'm on the outside. So be careful, guys, how we talk when we're around people in our fellowship. Because sometimes we're the only big book that people are going to read, or only big book that people are going to remember. And so all of those loose words that happened while I was inside the fellowship came back at me while I was outside the fellowship. That's why I talk about it so much harder coming back than it is when I first come in. When I first come in, this is the friendly direction. When I'm coming back, sometimes this is not even a friendly direction. And it's much harder for me to make it back because I focus on the worst of, and that's not, I'm not blaming like 99% of the people in here, but maybe what I have to do is I got to make sure that I'm even more so stepping up here. And I'm even more so letting people know, no, we're not thinking what you think we're thinking. Because I'm thinking that they're all thinking all this stuff about me. Like, oh, why can't he be more like his brother? They got all these years. They're still here. What's wrong with him? Look at all these times he tried to make it back here. He doesn't want this thing. If he really wanted it, he would get it. Oh, I know why he didn't do it. He didn't, all these different stupid thoughts that were in my head. And so there was no friendly direction most of the time. And so I was trying to get back here by myself. I tried going to meetings, but I would go to meetings late because I'm too ashamed and embarrassed to raise my hand as new. I would leave meetings early because I didn't want to take chips and I'm too ashamed and embarrassed. So I'm at meetings, but not in meetings. Then I decided, okay, how did I get back here? I mean, here in the first place, I took the steps. So I decided I would take myself through the steps, right? And I'll sponsor myself. So now I'm going to meetings where I don't know any of the people, and I'm going steps 1 through 4, write a great 4-step, find a stranger, do a tremendous 5th step, then just skip the steps 12 and 13 and keep relapsing over and over and over again. And I had 16 years of agony like that. And then I finally surrendered. I was sitting behind my mom's garage. See, I'm a guy who always snuck around, always tried to act as if nobody knew what I was doing. I always said that I'm not hurting anybody other than me. And what I'm doing, I'm sneaking away and I'm doing it away from everybody. But God had saw fit to take my eyesight away from me in 2009. He gave me glaucoma. I have 0% vision in my right eye, 30% in my left. So now I'm living at my mom's house because my mother is only as happy as their most unhappy child. And so she rented me a room in her house. So now I'm sneaking out. I'm somehow wait till late at night when everybody's asleep, or I somehow go around and I'm sneaking behind her garage and I'm sitting back there and I'm getting loaded, right? I'm smoking crack and I'm drinking, right? And smoking weed. And I'm sneaking girls back there and all this other stuff, right? You know the stuff we do when we get loaded. And I'm doing that, and and every now and then I'm trying to make it back to you guys, but I'm trying to make it back with my pride and integrity. I'm trying to do it my way. I'm trying to get me back here. And then finally one day, and I'm sneaking, right, all the time, thinking, my brothers smoke crack with me. They know exactly what's going on with me. I got all 5 of them, but especially the 3 in the fellowship. And thank God, I'll give them credit. They never were handing me big books or trying to hand me meeting directives. They never hounded me about coming back. What they did is they treated me like a brother in love. They never talked to me about the fellowship because that's not their job. That's not their role. Their role was to be a walking example of what Cocaine Anonymous is, a walking example of the attraction of Cocaine Anonymous. And that's our role when we have people in our lives that are doing that, because they can't hear us. The people that are close to us, too close to us in our lives, our sons, our daughters, our wives, our brothers, those people can't hear us. What we do is we have to be a walking big book, to walk an example. And that's how my brothers were. They were an attraction, but I couldn't. Thank God they were that. That was the only thing that kind of kept me close to sane. And I remember I surrendered. I did step 1 and I did step 1 behind my mom's garage. One day I was sitting back there and I pushed that pipe, a broken little straight shooter, and I tried to pull on it. Nothing came out, and I had a bottle of Cisco, and I don't even like drinking anyway. And I remember I was sitting there and I surrendered. I didn't surrender to God. I didn't surrender to the fellowship. I surrendered to the fact that I couldn't do it. I surrendered to the fact that I could no longer. I said, I've tried every way I can to get back to you guys, and that I can't make it. I gave up. I said to myself, this was in 2017. I was like just sitting here and I was feeling that feeling that I felt behind that garage, behind my mom's garage. That's the same house where we had never thoroughly baked before. And I'm in there living in her house and I'm behind that garage one day. And I remember sitting there and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I said, I can't hide this anymore. I said, this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I said, I can't make it back to you guys. I give up. I give up. And God, I guess God saw enough in there. And about a week later is when he sent help. Help don't come in the way that we think help is going to come all the time. It came in the form of my so-called ex-girlfriend stealing my mother's car out of her driveway where I was staying in my mom's house. And my baby brother came and said, you got to leave my mom's house. And I went to rehab. I went to I called my sponsor, who I hadn't talked to in years, and he got me in that same rehab. I've been to twice in a 5-year period. See, and I had surrendered to the fact that I couldn't do it. So I gave me up, and thank God that God doesn't need permission to work in my life. And God started working in my life right then and there when I went to that rehab, and my sponsor, Rico, walked up on me with me walking with my head down, and he said, "Pick your head up. You're a child of God." He said, "God wouldn't put everything he put you through for 16 years to leave you out here like that." And I immediately took a step to, well, I don't think I took step 2. What I said to him was, "Would you please take me through the steps?" And I immediately asked another man for help. And that was the miracle of it. And God just started pouring grace on me right then and there. And I still was cursing God. I was still cursing God all that time. And I came out of there on the 3rd step, and I walked in the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. I had done steps 1 and 2. And I was on step 3 when I walked out of there. I came to believe, and then and I remember when I was on my knees and Never Too Early, I walked in there, and God still pouring grace on me, because I walked out of there on step 3 and walked right in the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop when we were live, and we were on step 3, and that's 200. When we do the 3rd step prayer, we have a big potluck. It's a big deal. And it was 250 to 300 of us in there on our hands and knees doing that 3rd step prayer together. And that whole time I was cursing God. I was cursing God, and I had no belief that God could do anything for me. But see, like I told you before, see, the important thing was I believed that you guys believed. I believed it was possible. That's all I need to do. And how do you work the 3rd step? See, because I could do the 3rd step prayer all day and night. I could make that decision, but it's like when you got those 3 frogs on a log, and one of them make a decision to jump off, leap off. How many frogs you got on there? You still got 3, because it's only a decision. So I made that decision along with everybody else, but I did the action. And in the big book, it tells us it has to be followed by immediate action. We launch into the 4th step. We launch like a rock launching. We immediately go into it, and we went immediately into that 4th step, and that's how I worked that 3rd step this time. That's how I got back in touch with God, because I put God on that 4th step. And like my brother Ralph always says, we have that totally justified anger I had at my daughter being murdered, totally tortured, murdered, and I had done nothing to anybody, neither had she. And I was so angry all the time, and I couldn't get past that anger, not with God, not with anybody. And what Ralph always said is, on that 4th step, when you have totally justified anger, do you want to be right, or do you want to be free? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be free? And I chose freedom this time. And I put God on that 4th step. And when I put him on there, things started to look different. I realized God wasn't the one that made the decision to give my little bad medication. Now it's Children's Hospital. God wasn't the one that made the decision to murder my daughter. That was Cedars-Sinai. They made a money decision to do that about my daughter. I prayed, though, God, take my life, save my daughter. But when did God start working for me instead of me working for God? And then the final big thing, I was so upset with God that he only let me have my daughter for 4.5 years, that he ripped her out of my life. He ripped her out of my life, and I only had her 4.5 years. But see, when I look at the world differently, the world looks differently at me. And the way I prefer to look at it is this: that God held Angela Marie White in his arms before he put her on this earth. He said, you are going to be tortured for 4 long months at the end of your life, and you're going to die a horrible death. What I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you to a man that's going to love you every single day of your life. Every single day. I'm going to give you to the best father in the world. And he gave her to me. And see, that's my miracle baby. Baby that I didn't even think I could have. I always thought I couldn't have a child. And so the way I prefer to look at it is this: not that God only let me have my daughter for 4.5 years, but that God allowed me to be a father for 4.5 years, the best 4.5 years of my life. Young, I don't know if I really addressed steps 1, 2, and 3 along with this story, but I did the absolute best that I can. What I try to do, guys, is I try to bring you my experience. And Young, thank you so much for allowing me another opportunity of trying to do that. My name's Reggie White. I'm an addict. Thank you for allowing me to share.